Your husband is never going to impress anyone." Those words were said with a laugh, but they hurt more than anyone in that room could understand. I was standing beside my husband, Daniel, at my Aunt Linda's house during my grandfather's birthday dinner. The room was full of relatives who were supposed to support us. Instead, they were judging the man I loved. Daniel heard every word, but he didn't get angry. He didn't argue. He simply smiled and held my hand. That was Daniel. He never felt the need to prove himself to people who had already decided what they thought of him. But I wasn't like him. I wanted to defend him. I wanted to tell everyone about the man they couldn't see. The man who worked hard every day, helped others without expecting anything back, and always treated people with kindness. Before I could say anything, my cousin Ryan laughed. "Come on, we're just being honest. Daniel's a nice guy, but he isn't someone who will ever impress anyone." The room filled with laughter. My heart sank. It wasn't a stranger insulting him. It was my own family. My mother looked at me and said, "You're smart. I still don't understand why you chose someone so ordinary." That word stayed in my mind. Ordinary, as if kindness was ordinary, as if loyalty was ordinary, as if a good heart had no value. Daniel didn't respond with anger. Instead, he greeted everyone politely, helped my grandfather sit down, and thanked my aunt for the meal. My father watched him and said, "Being polite is good, but the world respects achievements and status." Daniel calmly replied, "Maybe, but I believe how someone treats people when they have nothing to gain says more about them." The table became silent for a moment, but the criticism didn't stop. During dinner, everyone started talking about their achievements. One person had a successful business. Another had a big promotion. Everyone was proud. Then Ryan looked at Daniel. "So what about you? What's the biggest thing you've achieved?" Everyone waited. Daniel simply smiled. "I'm still trying to become a better person than I was yesterday." They laughed again, but Daniel didn't look embarrassed. Then suddenly his phone rang on the table. The entire room went quiet. Daniel looked at the screen. For the first time that evening, his expression changed. He stood up and walked outside to answer. Everyone watched through the glass door. He listened carefully and barely spoke. Then we heard only 4 words. "Understood. I'll be there." When he came back inside, something was different. I didn't know who had called. I didn't know why that conversation mattered, but I could feel it. That phone call was about to change everything. Daniel came back into the dining room with the same calm expression. But I noticed something different. There was a seriousness in his eyes. Not fear, not panic. It was the look of someone who had just received an important responsibility. Of course, my family noticed too, and instead of asking what happened, they turned it into another joke. Ryan leaned back and smiled. "So was that your big moment? Did someone finally discover your hidden talent?" A few people laughed. I felt my anger growing. I couldn't understand how they could continue mocking someone who had never disrespected them. Daniel calmly put his phone away. "It was a work matter," he said. My father raised his eyebrows. "Work matter? You always make things sound more important than they are." Daniel looked at him. "Some responsibilities require privacy." My mother shook her head. "See, always so mysterious. People who are truly successful don't need to act like they have secrets." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Why are you all doing this?" I asked. "Daniel has always treated everyone with respect." My aunt sighed. "We're not saying he's a bad person. He's a good man, but being good doesn't make someone impressive." Daniel gently touched my hand. "It's okay. That was who he was. Even when people tried to make him feel small, he never allowed their words to change his character." A few minutes later, my grandfather suddenly felt dizzy. Everyone froze. Before anyone could react, Daniel was already beside him. He helped him sit down, opened a window, brought him water, and calmly made sure he was okay. There was no panic, no confusion, just confidence. My grandfather looked at him and smiled. "You always know what to do." Daniel simply replied, "Sometimes staying calm is the most important thing." For the first time that day, nobody had a joke to make. Then Daniel's phone vibrated again. This time he looked at the screen for a long moment. He didn't answer. He just stood there quietly. 5 minutes later, a black SUV stopped outside the house. Everyone looked toward the window. My uncle frowned. "Are we expecting someone?" Nobody answered. Then another car arrived. And then another. The room that had been filled with laughter became completely silent. 3 people stepped out of the vehicles. They were dressed professionally and walked with confidence. They weren't looking around. They knew exactly where they were going. They walked straight toward our front door. My aunt opened it with a polite smile, expecting a neighbor, but her expression changed immediately. Standing outside was a man in a dark suit holding a folder. He looked into the room. His eyes passed over everyone. Then they stopped on Daniel. "Is Daniel here?" The entire room became silent. Everyone turned toward my husband. The same man they had called ordinary, the same man they said would never impress anyone. And for the first time that day, nobody laughed. The silence in the room felt completely different now. A few minutes earlier, everyone had been laughing at Daniel. They had treated him like someone who had nothing important to offer. Now, every person was watching him. Daniel walked toward the door calmly. The man in the suit smiled and extended his hand. "Daniel, I'm glad you answered the call." They shook hands respectfully. The man looked around the room and said, "I'm sorry for arriving without notice, but after that conversation, I felt this was something I needed to do personally." Nobody understood what he meant. My father looked confused. My uncle leaned toward him and whispered, "Who is this man?" For the first time that day, my family wasn't judging Daniel. They were trying to understand him. The man introduced himself as Michael. He greeted my grandfather politely and then turned back toward Daniel. "I know you don't like attention," Michael said, "but sometimes people need to know the truth." Daniel immediately shook his head. "Michael, you don't have to do this." But Michael continued, "Actually, I do." He looked around the room. "Because I heard the way some people spoke about you today." Everyone became uncomfortable. They knew exactly what he meant. Michael took a breath. "You called him ordinary. You said he would never impress anyone. You judged him because he doesn't talk about his achievements." No one replied. My mother lowered her eyes. My father stayed silent. Then Michael looked at Daniel with respect. This man was the reason our biggest project succeeded last year. Everyone looked surprised. I looked at my husband. I knew Daniel worked hard, but I never knew how much his dedication had affected others. Michael continued. When our team faced a serious problem, everyone was searching for answers. Daniel was the person who stayed calm. He worked until he found a solution and helped everyone move forward. The room became completely quiet. He never asked for praise. He never tried to take all the credit. He always believed that success belonged to the whole team. Ryan, who had been joking earlier, finally spoke. "So you're saying he is actually someone important?" Michael smiled. "I'm saying he is someone people can trust." He opened the folder in his hand and pulled out a sealed envelope. "This is for you, Daniel." Daniel looked at it carefully. "What is it?" Michael smiled. "The decision that will change the next chapter of your life." And at that moment, I realized that the phone call was never just about recognition. It was the beginning of something much bigger. A body in the room moved. Everyone was waiting for Daniel to open the envelope. The same people who had laughed at him earlier were now watching him with complete silence. Even I felt curious, not because I expected some unbelievable secret, but because I realized there was a side of Daniel that even I had never fully seen. Daniel looked at Michael. "Are you sure this is the right moment?" Michael smiled. "After everything that happened today, I think this is exactly when people need to understand." Daniel slowly opened the envelope. Inside was an official letter, confirming that he had been chosen to lead a major professional project and represent his team in a national leadership program. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about fame. It was about something much more valuable. Respect. Respect earned through hard work, patience, and integrity. My father stared at the letter. "So, you were the person behind that project?" Daniel calmly shook his head. "No, I was only one part of a great team. Everyone contributed, even after everything. He didn't try to make himself look better than anyone else." That was who Daniel was. Ryan, who had spent the entire afternoon making jokes, looked down. "I guess we misunderstood you." Daniel looked at him and replied calmly. "Sometimes people judge others based on what they can see, not who they really are." There was no anger in his voice, no revenge, just honesty. My mother slowly walked toward him. "Daniel, I'm sorry." Her voice was quiet. "I thought success was something visible. A big house, an important title, things that make people notice you." Daniel smiled gently. "I understand. But some of the greatest things a person builds are invisible." My grandfather smiled and held Daniel's hand. "I knew you were different." Those words meant more to Daniel than any award. because my grandfather wasn't impressed by his position. He was impressed by his heart. After Michael left, everything changed. The same relatives who had ignored Daniel earlier suddenly wanted to know about his work and experiences, but Daniel stayed exactly the same. He helped clean the table. He thanked my aunt for the dinner. He treated everyone with the same kindness as before. On the way home, I finally asked him, "Why didn't you ever tell my family about this?" Daniel looked out the window and answered quietly, "Because I didn't want people to respect me because of what I achieved. I wanted them to respect me because of who I am." Those words stayed with me. That night, my family learned that a person's true value isn't measured by money, titles, or appearances. The man they called ordinary was the person who proved everyone wrong without saying a single harsh word. And from that day forward, nobody ever looked at Daniel the same way again.